podcast, an inside look at California politics and the state legislature. I am your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and I'm excited today to be joined by my Capitol Director, Teresa Trujillo. Welcome to the show, Teresa.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm excited. This is my first time.
I know.
Yeah.
We're excited. We haven't, I think we've had like all the team on at this point, even the interns. But you've never come on the show, so I'm really excited you're here.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, so you and I go way back.
We do.
So Teresa and I used to work together many, many years ago. Well, first, Teresa, why don't you tell us like how you came to the Capitol, kind of your background in this world?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say that I am born and raised in Orangeville, California, because it's in the district, so that's super exciting.
Love Orangeville.
So, yeah, it's a great town. So, anyway, I don't know. I just really was in a political family, really loved politics a lot, and was really involved and active, I guess, growing up. And then I decided, I live in Sacramento. Why don't I just get my, major in government? And I did that. And then I started in the Capitol in 2005. And I was a scheduler for Assemblyman Bill Emerson. He was great to work for, amazing. Then the next year I became his ledge assistant. I got promoted. And then the next year I became his legislative director, got promoted again.
That moved really quick. That escalated quickly.
It really did. And I was so lucky to be able to promote in place.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And for such an awesome member, he was just great to work
Bill
for.
was amazing.
And so I did that. And then in 2010, we moved over to the Senate. And in 2011, I met you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I started as an intern in Bill Emerson's office.
Yeah.
And you were the first mentor I ever had in this building. So it was so awesome.
It was. And I think you stayed beyond your
I did.
Your intern obligation and stayed with us for 5 months or something like that.
I really wanted a job.
Exactly. And
so I worked for free for a very long time.
And then you moved on, of course, and are doing great things now. But after Bill Emerson, I ended up working for Assemblyman Jay Obernolte, who's now in Congress. And you and I worked together in that office as well.
Yeah. And I got to be your ledge director.
You were my ledge director. And I just, you and I worked great together. And I knew you were really good. And so I brought you on and we did that for a little bit. And you always told me you wanted to be a member one day. I think that started early.
I will say, though, now, it's not weird, but it is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's kind of surreal.
It is.
So
it's pretty funny. And then I remember through the census and everything, the lines got drawn a little bit. The redistricting and all that stuff. Everything got drawn a little bit more favorably to a Republican, and you said you're doing it, and I was so happy and so excited for you. And
it was really cool until it actually started, and then it gets then you're like, wow, this was crazy.
Yeah.
But no, it's pretty cool. So, really cool to have you in the office, obviously, but also on the podcast.
Yeah.
And we've been doing this. This is our 39th episode.
Wow.
So so it's been it's been a minute.
Yeah.
So it's been good.
I know. I never imagined myself to be on a podcast for sure. And I will say the most excited person is my son. So he thinks it's great. He told his friends already.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So you're going to have some new listeners.
Okay. All right.
So that's great. He thinks my next step is Joe Rogan. So it's totally perfect.
I'm sure that is,
great segue.
Based on, the way this podcast has been going, I'm sure Joe is next for sure.
So anyway, So
that's awesome. Though.
Yeah. So I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Well, I love it too, because honestly, especially compared to kind of, I guess, the experience that currently exists in the state capitol, I feel like you have more experience than a lot of people now in this building, right? I feel like not a lot of people are still around from 2005 or even 2010.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. There's
So
like a few people out there like me. But yeah, not a lot of
it's a
people.
shrinking number though, for
It
sure. It's like a
is.
lot of new staffers, which is great. Like the
Yeah.
new staffers are awesome,
uh
but you lose that like kind of institutional knowledge and that experience.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I remember the budget from '09 or whatever it was,
And it
or
sure has
and
changed.
it's changed so much.
It
It's
really
amazing.
has.
So,
Yeah. I remember not getting paid because the budget
oh
didn't
yeah,
get passed.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's changed for
Well, that's
sure.
terrible. That's why we're all Golden One Credit Union members. I don't know about you, but like I feel like most state workers,
Uh-huh.
because they would give like an advance or
Uh-huh.
something, even if the budget didn't pass or whatever.
Yeah.
And like no other bank would do that. So all the state workers like
Yeah.
went with Golden One or something.
Yeah, for sure. So
It's pretty funny.
that was crazy. It's definitely changed a lot.
That hasn't happened in like 14 years or 13
Yeah.
years, something like that, which is good.
Yeah.
So maybe something fun. You
Okay.
love music.
I love music.
We talk about music a lot. We have very different tastes in music.
We do.
But you definitely love music. So what was the most recent like concert you went to?
Yeah. Well, I love music. Specifically love live music. It's great. And the last concert I went to was Stagecoach.
Stagecoach. Nice.
Yes.
All right.
So
That's down in
it's in Indio.
India. Okay.
And so it's like Coachella is 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then Stagecoach is the third week.
Okay.
And so that's kind of, it's like all the same promoters.
Yeah.
And so
Nice.
the Stagecoach is like the country version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I love my country music, and so it was great, like, had such a blast. First time I've ever gone, probably the last time.
Really?
So many
It was
people.
crazy, right? I
So many
bet.
people. It was a little bit overwhelming, just, like, a lot of people, and it's just, like, I don't really love having to wait in line so long for the bathroom and
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? Those
No,
types of
that's
things.
yeah.
So it's fun, and it was a great experience, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Might be the last time.
Yeah, yeah.
Who's your favorite artist there?
It's Morgan Wallen.
Morgan Wallen. Okay, nice.
Morgan
Love it.
Wallen's my number one.
So he
Yeah.
was there.
He was
Who
there.
else? Like,
He
what are some of the
headlined.
other people that were there?
Eric-
Any non-country people there?
There was this. I think he was a singer. His name was Karen Leon.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
he actually Spanish singer,
Oh,
and I had no idea.
that's
And so
cool.
we went because we were going to see Dwight Yoakam, who's
Uh-huh.
like total
Yeah.
old timer from California.
Yeah.
And so we went over there, and it was like Spanish music, and he
That's
was
awesome.
big, he was huge. It was like,
That's
packed
awesome.
stage. So that was kind of
That's
cool.
cool.
And then Post Malone. Post
Post
Malone was
Malone was there. Is he trying to get into the country thing?
He's
or
in the
like-
country
Oh, he's in the country thing.
He has
Okay.
a new album, and
Interesting.
his first song that came out was with Morgan Wallen.
Ah, okay.
I Had Some Help, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it's gonna be
That's funny.
my summer song. But
That's so funny to me for some reason.
he did country. I think he's from Houston, Texas.
Okay.
And so I think that he was raised with country.
Like country, yeah.
Yeah. So he did country covers. It was a blast.
I just
He
think
was
it's so funny
awesome.
when like, these people like end up in country.
Mhm.
Like Post Malone, obviously Beyonce's messing with country now.
Yeah.
You have like I don't know, there's a million examples of it. Obviously like Carrie Underwood
Uh-huh.
and I don't know, there's like
There's
all kinds of
other-
people that end up in country.
Uh-huh. Darius Rucker.
Darius
He-
Rucker,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Uh-huh.
hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't know,
So
it's kinda
it's
funny to
fun.
me.
It's it's a storytelling platform
Yeah.
of
No, it's good.
music. And so I like that.
It's good. We will be. My wife hates country, but but I have actually grown. In fact, it's growing on me. So I'll occasionally, listen. It's more like easy listening to me.
Yeah, it is.
It's easier to listen to than some
Yeah.
of my music.
Kind of like reggae too. You and I like reggae
country.
together.
Those are like really relaxing.
They're relaxing for the most part. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm getting into it, but Nicole's not a big fan, except at the Folsom Rodeo. Like we're allowed to listen to country for like that week.
Okay.
And so that's coming up. We're
Oh.
going to that next month.
We are going.
So
I'm so excited.
I'm excited for that. We'll get our country music in.
Oh, good. I'm excited. I haven't been there since I was like a teenager or young adult. So I'm really excited to go back.
Oh yeah, I can't believe that.
It's
actually.
been forever.
That's crazy.
Well, I no longer live in Orangeville. I
yeah,
live
that's true.
in
So
the
it's a little
city.
farther for you.
in the
That's true.
city, so I don't.
But I
get
feel
back
like
there.
Orangevale, Folsom, it's a big draw.
It is for sure, for sure.
So we'll see how that goes. All right. So usually we'll start out with our question of the week this week. It's kind of so there's a just to give a little context here. There's a new program for that the state of California is testing out vehicle miles traveled, which is essentially a new way to fund road infrastructure.
Mhm.
So instead of charging people for their, in gas taxes, so for all the gas they buy, and it's really based on how much gas you use, it would actually tax you alternatively for how many miles you drive.
Mhm.
Now, there's a lot of policy, I think, concerns there and
Mhm.
considerations to be made there, but they are doing these pilot programs. So like California is now offering like $400 gift cards to test its alternative, this alternative to the gas tax. We'll put the link in the show notes if anyone actually wants to apply for this. I think they're still accepting applications. But one of the reasons that I find it really could have an important use is for electric vehicles,
Mhm.
because obviously electric vehicles don't use gasoline, and so they're not paying. I think according to the article, they're paying about a third. They do pay higher registration fees, but they pay about a third less than all the other average gas drivers on the road.
Mhm.
And so that's obviously a problem because they're using the roads just as much. They're actually heavier vehicles, so they might
Mhm.
be having a greater impact on the road. So the question this week is going to be: should electric vehicle drivers pay a vehicle mileage tax? So we'll put that up on our X page. You can go to at Point of Order Pod on X and vote there. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I always have thoughts. I mean, we need to do something, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Electric
yeah,
vehicles, like they pay extra in the registration, like you
yeah.
said, but they're heavier. I mean, trucks have to pay weight fees. They pay
That's
additional
true.
because
Yeah,
of how heavy they are, and so they do more damage to the roads.
yeah,
And electric vehicles, unlike gasoline cars, like you
yeah.
said, they're heavier, and so they're putting more of a strain on our roads as well. And we have really poor road quality in the
Yeah,
state of
awful.
California.
Yeah,
Awful. And so we need to be able to generate, more money somehow,
yeah,
right? And they
yeah,
should be paying their fair share.
yeah, for
And
sure.
I would say most electric vehicle owners are probably a little bit higher income
Yeah, well, at least right now, the
right
earlier
now,
adopters,
the
right?
early
Yeah,
adopters, right? Because they're a little bit more expensive to buy.
yeah,
And so I think that we need to
for
address
sure.
like well, and not only that, let's bring up the ban on combustible engines in
Mm-hmm.
2035.
2035.
So if that's happening, we're going there, we're going to have a lot more electric vehicles on the
In theory,
road.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's the state's goal, right?
the state's
So,
goal. So
um,
we're going to have to do something to you know,
yeah. Well, and of course, I think the 2035 goal is pretty ridiculous,
I think
but
so.
the reality is the state is pushing that direction and
Mhm.
really, encouraging people to go that direction.
Mhm.
And by the way, I am an EV driver,
Yes.
so but I agree with you.
Mhm.
Like, I don't, I as much as I hate my registration bill every year because it is a lot more than my
Mhm.
wife's gas car. It's nowhere near what she pays for in
Yeah.
gas taxes. It's
Mhm.
nowhere near. And I just don't think that's fair. I mean, I'm probably on the road more than she is.
Mhm.
So it really is. I actually have some pretty big policy concerns with VMT, like
I do
vehicle
too.
mileage tax, the VMT, just as like a broad policy. But I think for electric vehicles, it makes sense.
It
It's like,
does.
why not just maybe we can even pilot it on electric vehicles,
Mhm.
and just say, hey, let's see how it works for them. But it makes sense because you can't charge them a gas tax.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. We'll see. So maybe let's see what the listeners think. That again, should EV drivers pay a vehicle mileage tax? Probably in lieu of a higher registration fee, but they be essentially paying more towards road infrastructure? You can go to at Point of Order Pod on X to vote. There. By the way, I used to call it X/Twitter. I think today I'm making the official switch to X because they literally just changed their what's it called? Their website address to X.
Oh,
So
really?
they've had Twitter for a long time and now it's finally just X.
Got
And
it.
so I think I have to finally give in, even though I've been fighting it for many, many months.
I've been saying X for a while now for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm just like, it's X
Whatever.
now,
It is what it
whatever.
is.
But I
Yeah.
don't really use it, as you know. I'm
That's
not
true.
big into the
Yeah.
Twitter X
Thing.
universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm giving up. I think we're going just gonna say X from here on out. But all right, moving into our stories of the week. Lots to talk about this week. I think the big one, obviously, off the top, and we don't have to spend a ton of time because we've actually been talking a lot about the budget,
Hmm.
in recent podcasts. But if you have any thoughts, I want to hear them on the budget has to be passed this week. So this podcast will release on Wednesday. The budget, I think, deadline is June 15th, which is Friday, right?
Saturday.
It's Saturday. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So Saturday is technically the deadline,
Yeah.
but I think what we're hearing is it'll pass Thursday or Friday,
Thursday
right?
or Friday, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What are you hearing out there?
I don't know. I'm going to get briefed today, this
Oh,
afternoon.
yeah, that's right.
They're
Okay.
briefing us on the budget. But I mean, I know that we have a severe budget shortage. And if you think about over the last couple budget years, we had $160 billion surplus.
Yep.
And now we have, like a 40-something billion dollar deficit. So we've really been obviously spending a lot more than we should have.
Yep.
And we're having to dip into the rainy day funds. So we don't have to cut as many programs. That's why we have it, right? So that's important. But yeah, there's going to be some painful cuts. And I feel like some of the cuts proposed is to like homelessness programs, housing programs. And we're really, struggling there. The state of California is. And so, I don't know what's going to happen because of the cuts.
Well, and the rumor is supposed to be in print today. Is that the
Well, it has to be the 72-hour rule, right? So whenever it gets
if you're
in
getting
print,
briefed today, I'm like, I wonder is it going in print today or not?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So I guess we'll have to
Wait
and see.
Yeah.
But there is, what I'm interested in is there's a lot of disagreement, not a lot, but there's some disagreement between the governor and the legislature. So the version being put forward today is obviously the legislature, the legislature's budget, but obviously there's been discussions going on behind the scenes, I would imagine, if the governor's going to have to sign it. So, I think it'll be interesting to see what their compromises end up being. I know this LA Times piece that we'll put in the notes as well kind of breaks down some of their disagreements. So that like the MCO tax, the Medi-Cal reimbursement rate increases, like the legislature really wants to keep them towards Medi-Cal reimbursement. Governor wants to raid the those funds to pay for other things, which I think is a big problem.
It's a big problem. He wants to eliminate the rate increases. I think totally right. The governor does, and then
at least for now,
for now,
but essentially it would be permanently until we change our minds,
exactly.
Right? Which would be a big problem.
It is a big problem. We know the reimbursement rates for Medi-Cal for doctors is just like really poor. And so a lot of doctors just don't take Medi-Cal, and that just hurts our low-income Californians who count on that service. So I think it's a big problem that we're kind of going back on promises to increase the rates. And we paid this MCO tax, or we paid for that with the thought that that's where the money was going to go.
Of course, yeah.
And so it's a problem.
That was the part of the whole deal.
That's
right?
the deal.
So I think the legislature wants to hopefully they've been advocating to protect that.
Yeah.
And then there's some few, like I think you mentioned homelessness. He also has like all this money for prison reform, essentially to transform San Quentin.
Yep.
And they're like proposing, I know they want to cut that vision back a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it'll be an interesting to see like where his priorities and their priorities kind of line up.
Exactly.
So we'll probably go over that more next week on next week's show, and we have an idea of what the bill looks like. But this is the lovely part, is like we don't even know what the bill looks like yet. So it's really frustrating, and we have to vote on it in like 3 days.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're always scrambling to like look to see what's in the budget.
Hey, if it's the 15th, well, we'd be lucky to get done by the 14th, though.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah, me too.
It looks like this news site signed me out, but I don't know if you saw, I can't pull it up, but I don't know if you saw the article on the sidewalk sales permits in San Francisco.
I did.
Were you able to look at that one?
I did.
So basically, like they're proposing, is it London Breed and I think Senator Scott Wiener, Mayor Breed are proposing to like.
Well, she's put a pause on, London Breed has put a pause on the selling on Mission Street, I think, in general.
Right, of just like secondhand or like
because they're like Walgreens vendors. They're like those people shoplifting in Walgreens and all the other places, and then they're selling like soap and toothpaste and all that kind of stuff like as vendors. And so she's kind of put a pause on it, but then there's all the traditional vendors that have always sold there that are honest mom and pops that are like not able to sell there either, and that's probably how they make their living. So it's created a big problem.
It is a big problem, and it's so interesting. So I think now the city or the mayor and Senator Wiener wants to require like essentially permits from the city in
Got
order
it.
to be a vendor, like a street vendor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the interesting part of that, yeah, because you do have some legit, like,
Yeah.
awesome food vendors and stuff. I mean, San Francisco kind of has a bunch of
Yeah.
awesome street vendors, but then people are just popping up their little like tables
Uh-huh.
and stealing stuff from Walgreens and then
Mhm.
selling it on the street. And
Mhm.
obviously that doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And so they're trying to crack down on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well, I think they said that there was a proposal in the article, a proposal back in 2018 that
Hmm.
said that law enforcement couldn't enforce any laws on street vendors. So that's
Oh, okay,
that's
got it.
that's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And so law enforcement can't do anything. Their hands are tied because
Yeah.
of some 2018 proposal
Okay.
that said they can't do anything. They basically can't enforce
Yeah.
any broken or regulations from street
Crazy.
vendors.
Yeah. It sounds like a very regular trend in California where we
Yes.
just tie the hands of law enforcement
Yep.
and they're not able to enforce any laws, and so you just have kind of chaos, right?
Exactly.
And I think that is definitely happening. What's so funny about this is like they're like, we're gonna come up with a super creative permit policy and require permits for street vending to cut down on maybe hopefully retail theft. But
Hmm.
it's like, why don't we just fix the laws? Like, and I know to Mayor Breed's credit, she has endorsed the initiative to reform Prop
Yeah.
47. So she has acknowledged that like that's
Hmm.
obviously at the core of it. But like, hey, why don't we change that?
Hmm.
We're gonna be talking about that a little later too. But
Yeah.
like, why don't we just change instead of like reacting with these little policies?
Hmm.
Like, why don't we actually let law enforcement enforce the law in the first place with
Exactly.
retail theft, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, I don't know if you saw this one. There's a bill going through. We actually already saw it in the assembly, increasing
Yeah.
penalties for assaults on emergency room workers.
Hmm.
And this bill is having a lot more trouble in the Senate. So I
Hmm.
think it got out of the assembly pretty smoothly.
Hmm.
I think there were maybe some abstentions or something. But
Yeah.
it like there were five. It was a 5-member committee that heard it the other day, and it passed 3-1, essentially with
Yeah.
the minimum 3 votes.
Yeah. And public safety, I believe,
It's just so frustrating. It's
or
like
one of the committees anyway. Yeah, it is
so
crazy.
it's authored by a Democrat,
It
Freddie
is.
Rodriguez.
Hmm.
He spent 30 years as an emergency medical technician, and so he has a heart for this bill. But essentially, it would, yeah, increase penalties if you assault a hospital worker,
Hmm.
right? And seems pretty reasonable. This is becoming a much larger problem in the emergency rooms,
Hmm.
but there's a number of senators that have an issue with this.
Yeah.
Apparently,
Well, I didn't realize actually this is his second time running this bill. He ran it
yeah,
back when Jerry Brown was the governor, and Brown vetoed the bill and just says,
yeah.
I don't think this is going to do anything to
Basically, that it
reduce.
wouldn't be a deterrent.
Yeah, it
Is
wouldn't be a
what his
deterrent.
argument is.
And that's always what the argument is. But
And
what
that's
about
probably what the other members think too,
exactly?
right?
What
That
about accountability? What about
well, yeah,
accountability?
and that's the thing, right? It's like yes, obviously deterrence is a goal,
It's a goal.
but also yeah, accountability,
Hmm.
making sure people are have consequences for their actions.
Exactly.
That's another part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, we need to care about these workers, these
Yeah,
ER workers, who are getting, assaulted.
I also think the deterrence argument is just pretty weak anyway.
I think so too.
Like okay, so if you penalize the people that assault an ER worker, then they're being held accountable. So I mean, in theory, you would think that would reduce the thought of someone else doing it if they actually see people being held accountable, but they don't
Hmm.
right now.
But they don't.
And I know some of this is probably there's mental health
Hmm.
issues behind the folks that are maybe doing some of this,
Yes.
because a lot of this is probably folks that are obviously having issues that
Hmm.
need help. But yeah, I think it's pretty weak.
Yeah, I agree. It's very frustrating because that's the go-to. It's just I
Yeah,
don't think it's going to deter crime. That's the excuse for any type of raising any type of penalty is it's not going to deter crime. So that's
yeah,
just their go-to now to any bill or anything that we try
yeah.
to provide that we think is a rising problem. And so we think that there should be some type of accountability for it. And they just say, well, I don't think it's going to deter,
Yeah.
the crime. So there
So
can't
don't
be
do
any,
it.
so
Yeah.
don't do it. We can't do
Well,
it.
this building is just so against any increase in penalties.
Yeah.
I mean, we've struggled with that obviously on this bill with emergency room workers, obviously retail theft. Even the retail theft bills that are going through this year are really only focused on organized retail theft, which is a much larger scale problem. And then like fentanyl, right?
Fentanyl.
Like fentanyl. It's like we passed a bill last year that like you have to basically be trafficking so much fentanyl. I mean, it would you'd have to be one of the biggest fentanyl dealers to have any accountability. We're not willing to go after the people that are like dealing it in our schools or
Exactly.
communities. It's crazy.
Well, and it's leading to so many deaths, and fentanyl is just like, it's just something we've never, never seen before. I think it's like 50 times more potent than heroin.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And yet we're not willing to do
I know.
anything to hold these fentanyl or like not enough
Yeah.
to hold these fentanyl dealers accountable for like potentially, killing
Yeah.
kids and
It's
just
ridiculous.
adults. And
Over 100, I think it's like 115 people per week die of a fentanyl overdose in California right now.
it's crazy.
We had a bill this year, obviously you and
Yeah.
I, on essentially just saying, let's treat fentanyl like we treat cocaine and heroin. I mean, we weren't
Exactly.
even increasing penalty. We were just adding it
Yeah.
to the penalties already existing for those drugs, and we couldn't even get that done.
Yeah, and only for school children.
Oh
too.
yeah, and
I
ours was
mean,
limited to like around school grounds and things like that.
yeah.
Like it was super narrow
super narrow.
and couldn't even get it out of the assembly because
No.
it's just so maddening.
It is. It's really
and
maddening.
Yeah. So I this is another example. So definitely this was a bill I supported, obviously, to protect our emergency room workers.
Yeah.
It did get out of the assembly, but I'm hoping that, it finds some allies in the Senate. And then I'm really curious what the governor will do on it because I honestly have no idea.
I have no idea either.
So we'll have to wait and see. Big story out this week for Sacramento County, where obviously I represent. Sacramento County completed their point in time homelessness count. I'm trying to remember the number now off the top of my head. It's a
I think it's around
29% deduction.
yeah,
or
29%
I'm
reduction.
sorry.
I think 3,000 less homeless, something like
Yeah.
that.
So the official numbers,
Yeah.
right? Which and even the folks, by the way, that completed the count, the group, they actually acknowledge this is an undercount.
Yes.
So this isn't like hyperbolic to say like these are as close as we're gonna, like these are undercounted.
Yes.
Because the group that actually did it believes that as well. But
Mhm.
essentially, yes, according to the official numbers, we've had homelessness drop by 29% in Sacramento County. I would say if you talk to most residents, they
Mhm.
probably haven't felt that decrease.
Yeah, well, I think like in one of the articles, Loaves and Fishes, I don't
Oh, yeah,
know, like
that's-
some executive or something there was like, really, we're not seeing that at all.
Yeah.
And
so,
they're the ones helping the community, right? They're helping the homeless.
So it was really interesting. So
Yeah.
Sacramento Loaves and Fishes put out a written statement, said it does not have data to support such an extreme decline.
Yes.
These numbers are incredibly difficult to believe and further highlight the trust issues with local government that our guests have consistently expressed over our many years of service. So this is obviously a nonprofit. They serve hundreds of unhoused residents every day in the River District in Sacramento, in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, that's pretty powerful coming from
It
a group
is.
that's in this every day.
Exactly.
And they're one of the most respected,
Mhm.
homelessness outreach groups in our city.
Well, they know how many people they're serving.
Exactly. And they're probably saying, no, we see greater need, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I have another group in Folsom,
Mhm.
Jake's Journey Home, that helps with like job training and, kind of more urgent assistance to help people in times of crisis and then help them get, to other services long term. They're an amazing program. Actually, the head of the program is one of my neighbors, actually.
Oh, how
And so we live on the same street. But they're a really incredible program, but they're focused on Folsom, like
Mhm.
Folsom homelessness in Folsom,
Mhm.
which, by the way, of all three of my cities, Citrus Heights, Rancho Cordova, and Folsom, Citrus Heights and Rancho reported a decrease. Folsom reported, oh gosh, I don't know the number, but it was a big increase. They went from like 20 essentially people to 133 or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
I
that.
think so,
I mean, so
133
the percentage, whatever that percentage
is a
is a
lot.
substantial percentage increase in Folsom. Um, and she talking with her, she's
Mhm.
like, I know 450 people in Folsom that we've interacted with. Like we
Mhm.
have names. It's not like,
Yeah.
so like, I mean, that is a huge gap between 133 and 400 something people.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it is concerning that this is substantially underreported.
Mhm.
Um, and I certainly don't want to make a victory lap on this because I think
Yeah.
we have a long way to go.
Yeah, and if we've
So,
made improvements, that's great, but
of
obviously we
course,
have a
yeah,
lot more to do. I mean, I know from my experience, I've been working downtown since 2005, as I've
yeah,
mentioned earlier, and I mean, back then there was no homeless. There was we would maybe have like one, and it was the same one all the time. It's like
yeah,
you would talk to or whatever, like one. And now
yeah,
it's like you walk around the
yeah,
Capitol, you go to like any of the local parks that are around the Capitol,
yeah,
and they're filled with homeless. And
yeah.
it's just it's so sad to
It is
see.
sad. It's actually very sad.
Yeah, it's
I think the number in Sacramento, let's see, Sacramento County, I think as a whole is 6,615. But
yeah,
I think the city of Sacramento has over 3,000 people
yeah,
that are, I think that's unsheltered homeless
yeah.
as well, which is incredible.
It's all under our freeways, overpasses, and around Capitol Park.
Yeah, it's incredible. So,
Yeah,
obviously, again, I think some local folks are taking a bit of a victory lap on look
yeah,
at all the great work we're doing. I'm sure that there are some things we have done that have done good work. I know
yeah.
some of our county supervisors, like Rich Desmond
Mhm,
and Pat Hume and they've been really focused on this problem.
mhm,
And Rich, in particular, has really been an advocate for some of the different tiny home projects and some of the other things we've been doing.
mhm,
And I do think we've made some progress there, which
mhm.
is good. But you do have to compare, like this is 22 to 24. They're saying it decreased 29%, but we are still well above where we were in 2019.
Yeah,
And so, like, we have this maybe slight decline from the peak
yeah,
that may or may not, right, be fully accurate, but we're still up substantially from 2019. And I
yeah.
think we need to remember that,
That's a
right?
good
Yeah.
point because I think it increased like 67% or something.
Yeah, so like
Something
from
like that?
2019 to 2022, it went up 67%,
Yeah,
which I think kind of blew people's minds. And
yeah.
so you could say that that was maybe an outlier stat as
Mhm.
well. And so really it might be closer where we're at today,
Yeah.
but I still think, it's probably underreported. And so
Mhm.
I think the point is there's still a lot of work to do in
Yeah.
the county, unincorporated, obviously the city of Sacramento, but even
Mhm.
in our suburban cities, like,
Mhm.
it's still definitely a growing concern. So,
For sure.
yeah, so it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, we'll see what happens in the state budget, but my big focus has been on just accountability, right? And
Mhm.
you and I worked on the audit of homelessness spending,
Yeah.
make sure that we obviously found that the state isn't tracking any of their dollars. We don't
Mhm.
know where any of the money's going. That's a huge problem. And so we're really glad to have our bill moving forward through the Senate right now.
Yep.
I don't even know where that's at right now, but it's
So I do.
I should ask you. Yeah.
It's double
Oh,
referred
that's right.
to
Yeah, yeah.
Housing and Human Services.
Right,
So
right.
housing, I think they're looking to hear it on the 18th, which would be
Okay.
next week.
Okay.
And then it would be heard after that in Human Services.
Yeah.
Um, so hopefully that
Great.
goes as well as it did in the assembly, which was great.
Which it doesn't always go as well in the
It
Senate as it
doesn't.
did in your house of origin or the house where you represent. So
Yeah, exactly.
it can be a little trickier, but yeah, really hoping that we're able to. I mean, look, I mean, it's pretty hard to make the argument that we shouldn't be tracking
Yeah,
all this
exactly.
money, right?
Uh-huh.
The only argument that is really a concern is that it's going to cost some money to track the money, but
Exactly. But we should be doing
I
that.
think, like, yeah, I mean, that's that'll help you probably save money in the
Yeah.
long run.
And
So,
we have actually gotten a huge bipartisan coalition
yeah,
to co-author this
yeah,
bill too. So I'm hoping that helps with the Senate because we have quite a few senators
yep,
co-authoring. So I'm pretty
which
excited
is
about
awesome.
that.
Yeah, big shout out to the Problem Solvers Caucus. I
Yeah.
know a lot of the bipartisan support is from
Yeah.
that group, and we've made it a priority for us. So
Yeah.
happy to have the Problem Solvers Caucus on board with that. On the same topic,
Yeah.
there's another bill going through the legislature right now. I'm trying to find the number here. AB 2479. That is, I would say, a major step in the right
Mm-hmm.
direction, similar to a bill that I introduced this year, to really get at kind of reducing the restrictions around housing first
Mm-hmm.
policies in California.
Mm-hmm.
So today, as we stand now in California, we can only spend money if the program is housing first, meaning that housing is provided, but services and all of that is voluntary. There are no
Mm-hmm.
strings attached to that
Mm-hmm.
housing. It's, this bill, just to really quick, and then I'll get your thoughts on it. This bill would allow for 25% of the money that we spend to go to
Mm-hmm.
non-housing first programs,
Mm-hmm.
essentially prevention programs, sober living
Mm-hmm.
environments, things, substance abuse treatment facilities, things like that, where they're actually, addressing some of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I think are keeping people in the cycle of homelessness. So what are your thoughts on this
Well,
bill?
first of all, I think it's even worse than that. I think that not only is our policy housing first, but I think that our policy is if they give housing but require sobriety,
Right,
they just aren't eligible for the
right,
funding. So if
right,
there's any, I mean, they're still providing housing,
right.
but if there's any sobriety requirement, the fact that we just say no,
They get no money. Yeah.
even if they have a great track record and great success rate,
Yep.
I mean, I think you have a place in your
Yep.
district that has a great track record,
Yeah,
great.
St. John's is like 75% success rate. Yeah.
But so we don't want to look at that and maybe
I know.
help them out when they're
Yeah.
doing great things and getting people into permanent housing
Yeah.
and getting them off addicted, the
Yeah.
substances that are
Totally.
holding so many people down, and why so many people are homeless because they're
Yeah.
addicted to, some type of drug. And so I think that that's a huge problem that the state's decided to take that approach. And I think that's part of our homeless problem
I think
as
it's a
well.
huge part of why we're not seeing improvements too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I definitely think that that's a great idea. I mean, I think that this is definitely a more conservative of approach. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that obviously
Which he's getting some flack for because he's a more progressive San Francisco
from San
Democrat,
Francisco,
right?
but it's interesting to see how San Francisco,
Yeah.
kind of like the liberal bastion in our
Yeah.
state, is really starting to move to the right because they're the ones that are seeing the things that are going
Yeah.
wrong,
Yeah.
from their
Right.
policies. Before anyone else is seeing them, kind of like the consequences
Yeah.
of some of these feel-good
Totally.
policies.
They're seeing what's happening.
The fallout is what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now they're
Yeah.
kind of reversing direction a little bit.
It's really interesting to watch, and I think I really appreciate this effort. I mean, our bill, would have essentially gotten rid of housing first,
Mhm.
not gotten rid of the programs, obviously,
Yeah.
but essentially gotten rid of the requirements that the money go to that, right? So we would
Yeah.
have repealed that requirement, which
Mhm.
all that would have done is create flexibility on those dollars, so they can
Exactly.
go to housing first, but they can also go to these sobriety, type programs, right?
Yeah.
And his bill's taking we couldn't even get a hearing for that bill though, which was the sad
Nope.
part in the assembly. They wouldn't
Yeah.
even set it for hearing. So I was very disappointed in that. And I kind of
Mhm.
thought, well, that's an unfortunate roadblock for this year. But
Mhm.
this bill is carrying forward a more modest kind of version of that bill, which
Mhm.
is 25% of our dollars can be spent on that. I think it might not be enough, but I think it's a
Mhm.
good start.
I think so
And I
too.
think the fact that we're having that conversation,
Mhm.
because housing first has kind of been untouchable in the
Mhm.
legislature.
Mhm.
And this is the first time we're saying, hey, no, we need to at least consider a broader, types of programs, right? Beyond housing
Mhm.
first. Because if we don't start doing something differently,
Yeah.
we're going to see the same results.
Exactly.
So,
So yeah, I'm really hopeful. I'm really hopeful because every Californian,
yeah.
really wants our state to just solve this problem.
Yeah.
And it's just a huge issue for most Californians. So I really think that we need to start, taking different approaches to see what we can do to solve homelessness.
Yeah, it's interesting. The author Matt Haney, who is obviously pushing this bill forward, has been getting some pushback from
Mm-hmm.
the left
Mm-hmm.
on this bill and how, like, no, we need to do harm reduction. We need to do, I mean, San Francisco's kind of famous for having like like legalized drug programs
Yep.
and needle areas and clean
Mm-hmm.
needle. Just a lot of really, I think enabling, let's say,
Enabling.
policies, right?
Yeah.
But he's quoted here saying, I do think that harm reduction, as we understood it 10 to 15 years ago, should not be the strategy today in light of the dangers and threats of fentanyl. So
Yep.
he actually sees this as the fentanyl crisis as a huge motivating factor for this, because people are dying.
Yep.
They're dying on the streets right
Mm-hmm.
now, so it's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
It is. It really is. So I'm glad. I'm glad that I feel like there's some sanity coming back to some different members in the legislature because we haven't seen that.
For sure. Yeah. We had, so this also notes, because this is the Sac B and they kind of
Yeah.
bring it back to Sacramento, but there was 227 homeless people who died in Sac County alone last year. And 47 of those were fentanyl,
Yeah.
which really brings a lot of perspective to it, I think. So.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, I'm excited. We'll see how this does in the Senate too. Sometimes
Yeah.
I think we did pass out of the Assembly. So
We
that was
did.
good. I won't stay on this one really, but on the homelessness topic, there was a big
Yeah.
story that came out. 2.7 million taxpayer dollars meant to build homeless housing ended up at this LA nonprofit.
Yep.
The money, all the projects are now foreclosed upon. I think it was like
Mhm.
7 housing projects.
7
That
housing
money
projects.
essentially did nothing.
Mhm.
It was all part of this Project Home Key, and it was a developer and a nonprofit that were supposed to like accomplish this task, and
Yeah.
none of it happened.
Mhm.
Just another example of why we did the audit in the first
Mhm.
place, of like, we need to know where all of these dollars are going, because
Yeah.
this is some of the stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
Right? So
Well, it's kind of crazy. And they talked about like how much the nonprofit was going to get paid for this anyway. And they said, what, like, I don't know, like over $3 million. And it's like, it just makes you question. I don't know.
It
It's
does.
just like these big organizations that make all this money with the problems of
Yep.
California is having, and yet we're not solving the problem. But some people are getting money. We know that. We know that
people are making money.
$24
Yeah.
billion has been spent on homelessness. We do know that.
Yeah, 24 billion
And
has been spent. Well, and the audit found that, like, one of the biggest areas, like blind spots, is
Mhm.
like tens of millions of dollars in some of the cities that were audited just get sent to local, service providers,
Mhm.
and then they never check on where that money goes.
Yep.
So, like, obviously people, I mean, one of the guys in this article
Mhm.
was driving like a Ferrari, and I don't know if you saw that. It
Oh,
was
I did.
crazy. It was like
Renting a house in Beverly Hills or something.
Yeah, a house in Beverly Hills. And
This is the nonprofit guy, I believe. Is it the
was,
nonprofit guy?
see if I can find it here.
Yeah, I read that, and I'm just
I
like,
mean, it was just crazy.
Gucci, like all the name brand stuff he had, and just like living lifestyles of the rich and famous while like supposedly being a homeless advocate.
I know.
I don't know
Yeah.
how that
It's
meshes
crazy.
together. It's just kind of crazy.
Well, we'll put the article in the show notes because it's actually worth a read.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Let's see, homes. Let's see, stealing money for affordable housing, spending on personal expenses, including $46,000 a month rental home.
Yeah,
Like,
Beverly
first,
Hills.
like who in Beverly
Right.
Hills, Louis Vuitton, Chanel handbags,
Yeah,
5,000 monthly lease for a Ferrari Portofino. I don't even know what that is.
I don't either, but it's nice.
$46,000 a month.
I
I
just
mean, you
can't.
could rent like a commercial space for that
Oh
amount
my
of money.
gosh.
That's insanity.
It is so crazy. It's so crazy.
And it's not. It's obviously, it's angering for the taxpayer, because
Yeah,
that's taxpayer dollars are clearly being wasted.
yeah.
Tens of million dollars going to, and not all these service providers are bad
No.
actors. I'm not trying to say that. I just want to be clear on that. But this is why we need accountability, because for
Mhm.
the ones that are bad actors, we need to make sure that they're not getting any
Yeah,
money,
they're rooted
right?
out of the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get them out of the system. Don't, and they're also not helping the homeless,
Mhm.
right? So the taxpayer has a gripe, but the homeless advocate should have a gripe. Like,
They should.
you're taking this money for your own personal purposes.
Mhm.
You don't belong in this space, right?
Exactly.
So that's why I think the accountability part's so important. So that was angering, but a couple more quick ones here,
Okay.
and then we'll probably skip a couple of these bottom ones. But did want to note this California Supreme Court case that overturned this argument that stopped a Berkeley student housing project, that
Mhm.
people are pollution. Essentially, someone sued under CEQA to say that the noise from the students qualified as pollution, and blocked a housing project because of it. The California Supreme Court's now ruled, no, you can't do that. And it was in large part because of our bill last year. So I'm very excited about
It
that.
really was.
Buffy Wicks and I had
Uh-huh.
a bill last year that it was like one sentence, and it said,
Uh-huh.
no, people are not pollution. Like, noise cannot be considered as pollution under
Mhm.
CEQA. You cannot use that to stop housing projects.
Mhm.
And the Supreme Court
Agreed.
agreed. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think they used our bill
They used the bill
to
to
as like
reverse.
as
Yeah.
to reverse this decision.
Yeah.
But just really excited that we got to play a little small role in that.
For sure. Yeah. It's
And
awesome.
really, really, yeah, just obviously CEQA, for the listeners, CEQA is a very hard thing to change in California.
Mhm.
It's very, very much a third rail for some members in California politics, and to even get a small change that we're reversing this for a real life situation for
Yeah.
student housing in Berkeley. I mean, it's not my district, but I still think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty exciting, I think, to work on something and like see such an impact. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, exactly.
there was like all the news organizations had this article, and it was like, oh, it's so exciting. Like we were like one of the
Yeah.
authors on that bill, and
It's really awesome.
yeah.
So really excited. I think we're gonna stop there on stories of the week. The last note I'll make is Sites Reservoir project,
Yeah.
which is like one of the biggest surface water storage project in over 50 years in California.
Yeah.
Just cleared a major legal hurdle. One of the big environmental lawsuits got dismissed.
Mhm.
It will now have an opportunity to move forward finally after
Yeah.
many, 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 many years of kind of
Well,
challenges.
the crazy thing about that, if you think about it, is the water bond went in front of the voters in 2014.
Yes.
And California voters said that they wanted more
Yes.
above water storage.
Yep.
And we don't have anything to show for it. We do not have
We
anything
haven't
to
done
show
a
for
single large infrastructure project
Yeah.
in 10 years.
Yeah. And this will be like the first.
and this is
in a
actually
while.
tailing off the CEQA discussion. This is in
Yeah.
large part due to CEQA.
Mhm.
Constant legal challenges to these
Mhm.
projects, mostly by environmental groups. But I think this is a huge win for the Sites Reservoir project, and it's going to have a major impact, especially
Mhm.
in this area, on water storage. So
Yeah.
super excited to see that happening.
It's pretty exciting for sure.
So I want to get you out of here. I
Okay.
would try to keep these under an hour, so we'll try to do that today. But I wanted to get to our clip of the week first.
Okay.
This clip is Governor Newsom. Just to kind of set the context, I think there's a lot going on with Proposition 47 right now. There are, I would say the supermajority in the legislature and the governor really do not want the citizens initiative that is qualifying this month to be on the ballot. They have until June 27th to really negotiate it off.
Mhm.
And I don't think they're going to have success doing that. And so there's been a lot of games, which we'll talk about in a second. But we'll play Governor Newsom's kind of take on the situation here, and we can react.
Okay.
Are you in the legislature trying to negotiate the potential repeal of Prop 47 off the ballot?
So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of negotiations concurrently happening, parallel, so among many of them, Prop 47 is included.
Are you all just not confident that if it hits the ballot that voters will approve it?
It's just I don't think there's a need to have it on the ballot. Why have something on the ballot that doesn't actually achieve the goals that are intended, why do something that can't be done legislatively with more flexibility? I think it's a better approach to governing.
So you'll sign the legislation that might carry those inoperable clauses?
I will not tell you what I'm going to sign until it lands on my desk, because it's a process that's constantly evolving. But as you know well, better than most, we initiated and launched a package of bills working in partnership with both houses of the legislature that have been fantastic in terms of addressing the legitimate concerns that we've been highlighting for years now around retail theft, but also broadly organized retail theft.
Okay, so he said a few interesting things there, I feel like. Number one, there are a lot of moving parts. The big moving part is that they're working this week to insert in their organized retail theft package a poison pill amendment that, and it's actually on my Twitter page, or I said it, all right, on my X page, that you can go look at the actual language. But essentially, it's an inoperability clause that would say, if the initiative passes in November, then most of these bills that we passed on organized retail theft will become inoperable. So essentially killing their own bills by tying them to the success or failure of the initiative. Now, most people that I've talked to, they're like, why the heck would they do that? Why would they want to kill their own bills? And it's actually very cynical and very, I think clever, but also terrial.
Devious.
Devious. That is a much better word. It's a very devious approach, right? Because what they're trying to do, and I just want to lay this out for the listeners is they're also inserting, along with that poison pill, urgency clauses. Now, an urgency clause requires a 2/3 vote, so the bill would then require a 2/3 vote on these organized retail theft bills. But upon signature of the governor, they would go into effect immediately. So most bills don't go into effect until January 1st of the following year. But with an urgency clause, they go into effect immediately upon signature of the governor. So what's going to happen, and you can, mark my words on this one, for anyone listening, they're going to amend those bills this week with the poison pill, push them through the legislative process, get them to the governor's desk before the end of June. The governor will sign them immediately. They'll probably be in effect by the end of June, is my guess on the timeline. The attorney general is responsible for writing the ballot title and summary for every initiative that happens in November. That deadline is July 5th. And so as soon as these bills are going to be in law, the attorney general is going to go back to the drawing board on the ballot title and summary and say, this initiative to reform Proposition 47 will repeal important public safety legislation on retail theft that the legislature just passed.
Yep.
I mean, obviously it's not going to sound quite like that, but that's essentially what it's going to say.
Yeah.
And it's a gamesmanship of the process. It's a terrible, I think, undermining of democracy, if I'm being honest, of a citizens initiative that is basically going to be rightfully qualified with over 900,000 signatures. That is the moving parts that the governor is referring to. And it's been a lot of what we've been dealing with this last week or so. So really want to make people well aware of what's going on there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, anytime the government is looking to deceive the voters of the state, that's a problem.
Yep.
I mean, we're supposed to be about transparency and be above water. And this is it's really sad. And if for people who think that maybe what we're saying is crazy, I mean, a perfect example is Prop 47, what it was named. Prop 47 was named the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act.
Yep.
And what that did was downgraded all these different crimes from a felony to a misdemeanor. So it lessened penalties, and they called it the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. So, I mean, that's pretty that's not what that's not what it did. In fact, voters now overwhelmingly, strong majorities of California voters, want to repeal Prop 47, or at least portions of Prop 47, because of all of the retail theft crime. And the other problem is just the drug crimes. You know, it's downgrading all the drug drug crimes from a felony to a misdemeanor has actually had unintended consequences. Before, like, these drug addicts would go before a court,
Yep.
and basically, if they were going to have a felony, they opted instead to get help for, like, they'd
It
go
was
to rehab.
felony or treatment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
felony or treatment. We took away that. We
Yep.
took away that. So we don't have anything
Yep.
holding over them now. So they say, oh, I could spend either no time or I could go to treatment. Well, they're going to spend
Yeah.
no time.
Yeah, who's
Treatment's
gonna take
hard.
treatment?
Treatment's hard. So
Yeah.
it's like we took away like our best thing we had to get people help.
Yeah.
And so it's created a lot of problems. And as we've seen, like homelessness increasing and stuff like that because there's like a lot of drug addicts.
I think
you know?
it has been a contributing factor to homelessness.
I think so.
Absolutely. I think Prop 47, and there's an article a couple weeks ago, like just laughing at that idea. Like, oh, there's like basically claiming this initiative coalition is deceiving the public by saying that it's led to increased homelessness. Like there's no evidence of that. It's like, trust me, when you look at what Prop 47 actually did, I think it's very clear.
Yeah.
It took away incentives to go to treatment.
Yeah.
It took away, like to your point, the carrot and stick approach
Yeah.
that we used to be able to use. That's going to have an impact.
Yeah.
So
And the evidence is the data.
exactly.
The data shows.
The homelessness has skyrocketed since Prop 47 passed.
Yeah, I like when they say no
So-
evidence of that. Isn't like I'm pretty sure homelessness has increased. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's good
By a
evidence
lot
of that
in the last 10 years.
for
yeah.
sure.
Well, and that you bring up a good point about the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. Like the Attorney General used his authority, by the way, in California, right? A partisan Attorney General writes the ballot titles and summaries that voters see on the ballot. And I think that needs to change. That
For
needs to
sure.
be done by a nonpartisan official because it is constantly used to skew the voters' opinion of something. It was done in Prop 47. It wasn't written as the, changes felonies to misdemeanors act. No, it was portrayed and in the most positive view possible. So people thought they were helping
Yeah.
and they voted for it.
Yeah.
And now they're going to try to do it again this time when they're trying to repeal it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just the height of, it's such a cynical effort. It is just the height of hubris, I think, for the supermajority and the governor, to go this route.
Yeah.
It's just very maddening to me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And while we're doing good work on retail theft in the legislature, at the end of the day, we can't touch the stuff that was in Prop 47. It has to go before the
Has
voters
to go to the voters.
to touch that. So yeah, we're doing stuff around the edges. The only thing that we can do in the legislature to try to solve this growing problem, but we can't do what the voters can do in November.
Exactly.
With Prop 47, to like reform Prop 47. I mean, that's kind of important.
Well, legislative leadership's on record saying they don't want to reform Prop 47.
Yep.
They just want their bills. So by default, their bills do not touch Prop 47, right? And the only way to fix both, I want to have both. I want to have the legislature's bills that really are more focused on organized retail crime, which is a much harder thing. If you talk to any DA, it is a much harder thing to prosecute than the everyday retail theft. That's what the initiative will handle. But it's just interesting, the governor saying, well, we don't need it on the ballot. I'd rather have more flexibility. Because he is right. If the voters pass something, you need the voters to unpass it. That's what we're facing
That's
right
what
now.
we're doing.
That's what we're doing right now. But that's actually why I want both of these avenues, because if we only go with the legislature's plan, they could change it next year.
Yeah.
They literally could go back in next year and get rid of it and repeal it, and there would be nothing anyone could do about it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where, to be honest, I don't trust that the legislature is going to stay firm to this, even this commitment of the current bills.
Exactly. I
So-
mean, they will for a while, and then, when policies start working, crime goes down, and then they undo those
and
policies.
then they undo them. And
That's
they're
what
like,
they do.
But if the voters take care of it, then it'll be harder to do that. So,
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be an interesting week. So we're going to be doing a press conference tomorrow on this topic.
Yeah.
Really calling out the scheme here.
Yeah.
That truly is like a scheme to deceive voters and undermine, the democratic initiative process. And we're going to be calling that out tomorrow. So hopefully, this helps people. I would encourage people to, call their representatives. Obviously, if I'm your representative, you probably don't need to call, but for anyone else that's listening, definitely, definitely can call and share your opinion on that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've
um,
been here almost 20 years, and it's so disheartening to see things like this happen
yep,
because, people want to have faith in their government and that their government's actually doing stuff to help
totally.
them.
Yeah.
And it's just it's really unfortunate that we're playing politics this way, right?
Yep.
It's really unfortunate. And I mean, I know that you're a big proponent of like all of these bills and,
Yeah. Yeah.
Prop 40, the Prop 47 reforms and that kind of stuff. So it's like you're
Yeah.
definitely on the right side of this issue.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, let's just have both.
Let's just have
It's
both.
like, hey, let's fix the problem for real.
Yeah.
Let's, I think the bipartisan work we've done has been good,
hmm
but I think we need to do more than that. And so let's have both. And this poison pill is not going to allow that.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you. It really does undermine a faith in the institutions. It's like
Yeah.
people don't want to feel like they're being tricked.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's really what's going on here. And it's really sad to see. So,
Yeah.
any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I just think that it went a little bit better than I had expected.
No, it went great. Come on. Yeah.
So, I'm okay with my son watching
All right.
it.
All right. Good. Yeah. That's what everyone says, by the way. Like
Yeah.
Kate Sanchez, we had her on a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
Assemblywoman. She was terrified.
Yeah.
And it went great. And she's like, I'll come on again. This is great.
I
So
know.
I'm telling you, it's not that scary.
I
It's not
know.
that scary.
I know.
It's just all this like microphone camera stuff that freaks you out.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, on that note, I'll just say quickly that our next guest next week, I hesitate to say it, we're hoping that it's James Gallagher, Assembly member, Republican leader. We'll see if his schedules. He's a busy guy, so we'll see if we can get him on here. Hopefully, we'll have him next week. If you have ideas for future shows, you can email pointoforderpod@gmail.com. Listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can watch, subscribe, or follow on YouTube, X, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook @pointoforderpod. And you can follow me on X @Joshua_Hoover. Teresa, it was awesome having you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Maybe we'll have you on again.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good.
See you later.
Bye.